19 before 10, Tommy Tucker, WWL, on this Monday morning, May 9th, talking about oil and gas in Louisiana with Mike Moncla, president of Louisiana Oil and Gas Association. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, Tommy. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for taking the time. Has Russia's invasion of Ukraine helped Louisiana oil and gas or hurt it?
Commodity prices are key in our business for activity. And, I think the Russia-Ukraine invasion it's increased oil maybe 10%. Natural gas has been increased more since then. But yeah, I think, I hate that something like that is what sparks, our industry to prosper. But, we are commodity driven.
When it comes to exploration, we talk about the big companies, Exxon and Chevron and so forth, Shell. What role do the smaller companies play in this, especially as it relates to Louisiana and production?
Yeah, look, even nationwide, I think the majors, they represent less than 5% of all production in the United States. I'd have to look at the stats, but there's a lot of rigs out there drilling that aren't majors. My family business, we worked for 130 customers last year in Louisiana, just in South Louisiana, and you wouldn't recognize any of their names. They're all small companies. So, the big boys sold off their production years ago, and it's swapped hands several times in a lot of cases. And, the independents are who keep these companies busy in Louisiana.
So how did President Biden's policies, when he first was elected, how did that affect the smaller companies, the independent drillers? Well,
it's all that his negative message against our industry. You have to think, what his end game is. He's canceled the Keystone Pipeline. He urges banks to divest of all fossil fuel investments. He bans the lease sales. All these things have pushed oil and natural gas supply demand the other way. And, so in a way, he's helped our business, but we don't always vote for what's best for our business. We vote for what's best for the country. And certainly what he has done has pushed the price of oil up. Like I said, the Russian invasion only increased it 10% of where it was. It had doubled. It had more than doubled the price of oil since he took over. It was $37 the day before the election, and it was in the 90s when Ukraine got invaded. So it was already up quite a bit.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out in terms of who's responsible for what. And for example, when Democrats usually are in power, that's the best thing in the world for gun manufacturers, because people presume that there's going to be some type of effort to limit the amount of guns that you can have, and gun sales go through the roof, as do ammo sales. And I'm just wondering, when it comes to the Biden administration, were his policies beneficial to independent producers in Louisiana? But it's the conundrum of, while it's beneficial to the producers, the consumer gets hurt at the pump.
Yeah, and that doesn't always translate, but in this case, it certainly has. Last year, or a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago, when he got elected, I made the comment that, look, we were successful under Clinton. We were successful under Obama. There's no reason we can't be successful under Biden. And his policies have proved to push commodity prices where service companies can heal from a lot of wounds over the past 7 years. The last 7 years, there was over 1,000 bankruptcies. It was a tough 7 years in the oil and gas space. And we're finally, feeling a little, there's finally light at the end of the tunnel.
So that being said, President Trump was in office for those 7 years or more. I guess I'm trying to figure out if how do you balance oil and gas in Louisiana suffering under a Republican administration with the narrative that it's the Democratic administration that hurt oil and gas? I'm trying to understand all of this, Mike, and I'm not arguing. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of geopolitical stuff involved there. I mean, during at the end of Obama's reign was when the OPEC decided to flood the market on us, and that pretty much continued through Trump's term. And look, unbelievable that the oil and gas companies stayed the course and was able to get to 13.5 million barrels a day out of this country. And they were doing it at cheap oil, and they were doing it a lot of time on the backs of the service companies that, could not make any money. And so, now, you've got prices up, at $100, and the service companies have equipment that's been stacked for 7 years, and try to go get a loan at a bank to fix your equipment. And you got an administration that's telling banks not to give us money. So I mean, there's a lot to.
Has that been the case though?
About.
Have banks backed off on lending?
Oh, absolutely. We haven't been able to get a loan at my family business from a bank on even a receivable line in 7 years, and that's just a receivable line.
But that predates the Biden administration. I'm just trying to figure out who's responsible for what.
Yeah, no. Well, look, you've got banks leaving the oil and gas space because of the issues of bankruptcies, and then you've got the Biden administration telling banks that is basically they're getting punished. They're getting if they invest in oil and gas. So I mean they're getting all kind of incentives to invest in green, and basically punished to invest in oil and gas. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But during the end of the Trump term and the beginning of the Biden term, we also came out of COVID, which kind of helped flip supply and demand. And so now we're at a supply shortage, and I don't even think OPEC can turn the switch on like they used to be able to. And, they've got same problems. Equipment's been down for 7 years for them as well. So it's there's two sides of the oil and gas sector, right? You got the producers and you got the service side. And the producers can't turn wells back on without the service side. And when the service side has been crushed for 7 years, you can't just, they keep saying, well, the oil companies can just, put more wells back on. They can't do that without the service company. They can't do it. It's not how it works. You have to go spend money on workover rigs, wireline units, acidizing jobs, all kind of jobs to try to get that production back flowing in a well. And, now you got a shortage of equipment because everything's been stacked, and you got a shortage of people because people have left the industry over the last 7 years.
So let me get this text in before we let you go, and it's very complicated. I'm trying to understand all of this, and one thing I know, and I always say, Mike, is that there are no simple solutions to complex problems. This text says from Sal, are all current oil leases being worked? If not, what is to be gained with new leases? Talk us through that, if you would, please.
So, yeah, we kept getting that question a while back. Look, here's the thing. Mm-hmm. There's 9,000 unused leases. There's 37,000 used leases. It's the highest percentage of used leases in the history of our country. And there's only 9,000 that aren't being used right now. Okay, so why aren't they being used? Well, oil and gas companies have a 10-year outlook. They're not looking at things to buy and use next week. They have a long-term plan. They have, strategies. And a lot of times they'll go out and they'll have to do due diligence after they buy the property. So they get this property, now they own it. Now they can go, or they're leasing it. Now they can go do seismic work, 3D, 4D seismic. Sometimes these seismic surveys come back that there's no oil there. So their investment is for naught because there's no oil there. So there's a lot involved in that. And of the 9,000 unused leases, 2,200 of those leases are in litigation in courts between green groups and producers. So there's a lot in that equation as well.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate your time. You can come back. It's complicated stuff when trying to walk our way through it. Mike Moncla, President of Louisiana Oil and Gas Association, talking about oil and gas